Hey guys, this question just came in from Victor, who asked, how do you study optimally? Now, in terms of optimally, there is no one size fits all, but there is a few things you need to be thinking of in order to get the best use of your study time. The first thing, very simple, schedule your study time. Make sure you have designated time daily or at least weekly where you are studying. Whether it's 1 hour a day, 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, it doesn't matter so much, but what matters is you have a designated time of the day and week that you do study. So every week you're getting study time in. I don't like the approach of no study for like 2-3 weeks and then cram loads of studying in and try. I think it's always good to be learning as you go, because then this is how I like to study. So what I would do is, I've said this before in a previous study video, but I'll say it again because it's important. I would write down where I'm weak. Self-awareness is so key in poker, in life. Knowing what you're not good at really matters. So write down where you're weak or where you lack theoretical knowledge. And then as hands come up in game, you note them down under their criteria, under their spot. So then you build up a sample of these situations you're not very good at or you don't understand theoretically. And now you're getting hand samples. Once you've got 3 to 5 hands that have come up in this spot, it shows it's a frequent spot. It's happening quite often. You need to be able to understand this better. So then I would go over, use Pio and use the solvers to then get clarity on the situation. So when you go into a study session, an optimal study session, you go, I am weak or lack theoretical understanding in this spot. My objective is to understand this spot better so that I can implement it into my game. So you have an objective and an outcome. When you finish the study session, so you go for the solver, you don't care too much about the ranges being perfect. You just want the ranges to roughly represent the situation. You're never going to know exactly what the ranges are. Don't waste time on it. Just have them rough. And then look what Pio thinks. What does GTO think in this spot? Why does it use different types of hands that you were using? Why does it use these as check raise hands? These as check back hands? Why does it do what it does? What types of hands is it using in this spot? Is that different to what I was doing? Yes, it is. Okay, write that down. And then spend 5 minutes trying to understand it. If you don't understand why GTO does something and then you're trying to mimic it, it just doesn't work. Because the whole point is understand it in theory, and then when your opponents differ from it, you want to exploit them. So it's good to get your study time. It's really good to understand theoretical knowledge using solvers. I think it's a great way to study. But then you need to remember that's not in game. What's different? When you're playing a fish, don't use a GTO strategy. Exploit them to the maximum. What are they doing badly and how do you exploit them? So a modern day problem is people get too wrapped up in solvers, too wrapped up in GTO responses, and then they forget that all the edges and exploiting the opponent's weaknesses. The only reason to know GTO and have the theory is so one, you're solid yourself, you can't be exploited too heavily, but the main reason is so you can see when your opponents make mistakes and how to exploit them. So I'd say optimal study would be a schedule, have it as a weekly schedule, daily schedule, study times, and then an area where you're weak, a list of problems that you need to solve. And then when you do a study session, don't do random hands and waste your time just doing stupid stuff. Just have an objective in mind, learn it, and then how you're going to implement it into your game. And then after your study session, so another key sort of component of this is when you've finished it, you know this. I think once you've done the solutions, really spend like 10 minutes thinking the implications for your game. So understand what GTO does, why it does it, and then how are you going to use that in your game. Write it down, pen and paper, always the best way. What are you going to do different in your game? What are you going to do different now? How are you going to implement this? So the next session, so say you've played a session, done a study session, and the following day you would go, I'm going to try and implement this, this, and this. So like three things, no more than 3 things at a time, and then you try and implement it in your game, see what the feedback's like. So it's always the study's all about getting a theoretical understanding. Well, not always, but it's a good way to start. And then once you've got that, how do things look different in real time? How do your games play out different? What opponent tendencies are different to GTO? And then how can you exploit them as a result? So that's what I like to do. There's another part to this question which says, what is the normal mid-stakes way to study? There is no normal way to study. There's good practices and bad practices. The good ones are people who are learning stuff and putting it into their game. The bad practices are people who are putting time into solvers and not putting it into their game. So there is no how mid-stakes guys learn and study. I think way too many people spend way too much time on solvers and learn nothing theoretical. They try to replicate a scenario or a solution, trying to memorize it without trying to understand the theoretical implications and how that will play in a wide range of spots. So it's always, study's just about expanding your knowledge, and then once you've expanded your knowledge, it's useless as itself until you implement that into your game, and then you bring theory into real world solutions, and that's where the magic happens. So always remember, theory's good, but then practical implication trumps it every time.